You're saying it's the Democrats' fault that he's in. I'm saying, well, it's partly the fault of the people like you who are polishing his turds during the campaign and making him seem better than he is.
I didn't polish his turds in the campaign. Go back and read what I said. I just felt he would be different.
Please like, subscribe, and share. Tim Miller from The Bulwark sat down with Piers Morgan, a longtime friend of Donald Trump, to discuss the debate over so-called Trump derangement syndrome and whether Piers got Trump right or wrong during his second term. The conversation is engaging, with Tim Miller repeatedly challenging Piers' views. I also have some thoughts to add, so let's break it all down together.
As monitoring your show, my critique is, particularly during this Trump era, I think it was a little bit different when Biden was in because there's plenty of legitimate things to criticize Biden about. But during the Trump era, I'll come on and it'll be like, well, the ICE killed 2 people in the streets. That's segment 1. And then it's like segment 2, we have to find balance. So like, let's talk about, some crazy liberal school district in San Francisco where they, tried to take Abraham Lincoln's name off the school or something. And
why can't you do that? But how interesting that you would cite that as an example of something that's wrong. Whereas I would say, Tim, and I love you dearly. You're great when you come on my show, and I love what you do here. But right there's the problem. You would only want that show to be all about Trump bashing, and that's fine. That's what you do.
I'm just saying you're crazy.
But the other story can be just as interesting to a large constituent of my viewers. Yeah. Why would I be so? I mean, should I park myself into the bulwark camp? Should I become a little mini Tim Miller?
Obviously, it's interesting because you're feeding them sucker, to use your words. You're giving them something that's like, hey, you're right. The liberals are crazy. Let's talk about this random person.
Spoiler alert. A lot of liberals are crazy.
Well, sure. But a lot of conservatives are crazy.
Yes.
A lot of people are crazy. Humans are crazy.
Yes.
I'm talking about trying to make a judgment call on like what is important and what is not. And I feel like a lot of times like this idea that these woke excesses, there's some movie, The Odyssey has a black person in it. Like a lot of this stuff is stupid in the grand scheme of things compared to like life or death.
Yeah, but I do think, if you don't mind me saying, again, say this respectfully, there's a little bit of pomposity to that statement. In other words, you have decided you know better than me what you think is important. And I would say that is not necessarily true. A lot of the woke issues actually are things of legitimate mass concern. I'll give you an example. The ongoing furore around trans athletes in women's sport, for example.
I knew you were going to say this.
Well, because
it as important? Like, how many segments have you had on the show about trans people in women's sports versus how important that is to people in society? I just think that there's like this is out of whack. It's out of balance. I'm not saying don't talk about it, but it's also like, who cares?
Yeah, but this is the classic error that my liberal friends make. And by the way, I'm a recovering liberal, so I sit in the kind of Bill Maher place.
I'm a liberal immigrant, so we're going crossways.
But I would say that if you actually go out on the street and asked 1,000 people what they think about that, A, they would care, and B, they think it's complete nonsense. And what my liberal friends do, the terrible mistake you make, I'm afraid, when you try to say nobody cares, is you're missing the fact that they do care. And, it was people like Joe Biden, when he hitched his mast to saying that it was fine for trans women to compete in women's sport, actually Americans went, this is nonsense, which is why he lost.
My point is not that nobody cares. My point is that, like, in the grand scheme of things, you're covering a news show, having so many segments about like the 5th place performer in a women's high school swim match. It's like,
again, respectfully, who are you to tell me what my running orders should be? What, I mean, why should you dictate?
I'm not telling you what your running order should be. I'm just saying it speaks to the idea that I think that it's creating a fake balance. It's like, okay, on the one hand, Trump got us into a stupid war.
No.
On the other hand, oh my goodness, there was a lacrosse match that had a girl in it in West Virginia.
I used to be at CNN for 4 years. I was on Good Morning Britain for 5 years, and I can tell you it's exactly the same at those places, right? CNN has a mix of light and shade, serious and silly. Good Morning Britain more so because it was a morning show. The idea that you should only feed people with a diet of what you have deemed is serious and important is one of the reasons mainstream media in particular have been collapsing in popularity, because most people out there don't spend all day obsessing.
We agree on this. You're kind of walking past my criticism. You're walking past my criticism because we agree on this. Be silly. It's fine.
Yeah.
The thing is an excessive focus on random crazy liberal shit. There's plenty of random crazy, because I live in Louisiana. Let me tell you, there's plenty of crazy random conservative shit happening in middle schools. But anyway, this is my show.
So I can tell you,
we should talk about Trump.
Of course, but I can tell you, I've done a lot more, for example, on the Iran war than anything woke related in the last 3-4 months. And I've been incredibly critical of Trump from the start of it. So, I know we'll come to Trump and about balance and so on, but no, very few people have been out there as critical as I have been about Trump, who perhaps people presume would normally slightly slant my way towards him because I know it.
I totally agree. And for the same, and I had Sager and Genty on the show maybe about a month ago, and I said the same thing to him. And it's one thing that's hard for me to do is I don't have Trump bullshitters on my show. And so I'm looking for people who are sympathetic to Trump, but are also honest about him and critiquing about him. And I appreciate that about your show. To that point, let's go back to some Trump thoughts that you've had. But around Thanksgiving, after he was elected, you wrote in the New York Post that he called you and you think he's ready to be one of America's great presidents. You said that you've been struck by the realization that he's a changed man.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that's looking now.
Not great. Because he unfortunately has reverted to type. But more worryingly, I think, for his legacy, he has begun to do things which he specifically campaigned on the opposite. Not going into war in the Middle East, for example. Focusing on America first and getting inflation down and so on. Well, why would you launch a global trade war? And why would you go to war with Iran if actually those campaign aims were your priority? It's the opposite. It's going to have the opposite effect, as we've seen. So I think it's unfortunate. I did think that Trump Mark II, particularly after he survived several assassination attempts, I felt talking to him, he was a bit of a changed character. But, there's also the reality check. He's just turned 80. There aren't many people who turn 80 who suddenly become different people. I do think that he has, he's had, I'm sure we'll talk about this. He's had some things which have been great successes and he's had other things that have been big failures. He's still not even quite halfway. Well, how long's he got till the next election? Like 2.5 years. So he's still, he's not even halfway through his second term. He's got time to pivot and change course. The concern I would have if I was advising Trump is that I think it's looking more likely than not he might lose control of the House and the Senate in the midterms. And if that happens, he'll become a lame duck, which will be, for him, about as bad as life gets.
Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. When it comes to Piers Morgan believing Donald Trump had changed, I'm just not convinced. You don't have to like Piers, and I certainly wouldn't call myself a fan, but I also don't think he's naive. Anyone paying attention to Trump's first term could see what a second term would likely look like. The officials who occasionally challenged him would be gone, replaced by loyalists unwilling to push back. That's exactly what has happened. I appreciate that Piers has admitted he may have misjudged things, but it's still hard to believe he expected a different outcome after everything we saw the first time. As for Trump's age, that's a separate issue. His behavior raised concerns long before turning 80, and I don't think leaders at that age should be serving as president. From there, the conversation shifts to the whole idea of so-called Trump derangement syndrome.
My argument to the new incoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, the new Labour Prime Minister who will take his position in a couple of weeks, is if you were to have another referendum, there's nothing stopping you. I reckon you would have a 70% landslide vote by the British people to go back into the European Union.
But why can't you see the same clarity with our failed experiment?
Because even if because I'm not American, so it's your business, not mine. Secondly, if I did think that, it makes zero difference to the fact Trump will remain president as long as he stays alive in the next 2.5 years. So you can't, but the referendum, if you had a referendum aspect to your presidential system, fine. You don't. You elect a president for 4 years, and I think presidents should be judged at the end of 4 years.
Here's my issue though. You said that, you voted for some conservative president or some prime ministers for some liberal in the UK. I used to be a conservative. Part of what attracted me to conservatism was this like kind of small C conservative notion that came from you guys, was Burkean. This notion that like you don't know exactly when you make a big change, you don't know what the unintended consequences should be. You should make gradual change. You should be prudent. That is in the spirit of Thatcher and the spirit of Blair. What happened with Brexit and Trump wasn't conservative. Like it was arsony. It was an arson. It was like, we're going to blow up this system and try to build a new system in our image. And it's just obviously not working in either case.
Well, but I would say in relation to Thatcher and Blair, they both had moments where they blew up too. I mean, Thatcher notoriously over the poll tax, which was one of the most divisive and hated taxation systems that ever came into the country.
That's incremental change.
Hang on. And then Tony Blair illegally invaded Iraq, which was his legacy and was one of the biggest foreign policy disasters of my lifetime. And I opposed that very loudly as editor of the Daily Mirror at the time. So, even the people I voted for had moments where they blew up. Leaders blow up. They do dumb things, right? The question becomes
that's all Trump is blow up, blow up, blow up, blow up. Yeah, it's not incremental change. It's tear things down. It's Doge. We're going to end USAID. Yeah. It's all impulsive. It's not conservative. It's not a way to run.
It's not conservative. I agree with you. I agree. It's not conservative. And a lot of the things that you don't like about stuff he's done, I would agree with. I just think that to avoid the charge of TDS, you have to find it in your soul to find some things he's done which are correct.
No, some things are just rotten though. Some things are just rotten. Like the project is rotten. So it's kind of like, even if, like there is something like an element of the project that had a good outcome, it's part of a rotten project.
But I blame the left entirely, because if you believe that Trump has been a dismal failure and he's a rotten apple and all the rest of it, well, fine. You had an opportunity to force out your president, Biden, before it was too late, when he was obviously completely gaga. No one on the left wanted to say what was happening in front of their eyes. And then you left it so late that Kamala Harris got coronated, was clearly totally unsuited to take on Trump, and got the beating.
A lot.
Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. When it comes to corruption, my position is simple. If Hunter Biden broke the law, prosecute him. If Joe Biden broke the law, prosecute him too. I don't care whether someone is a Democrat or a Republican. But pretending every case of corruption is on the same level just doesn't make sense. It's like comparing someone stealing a few dollars from a convenience store to someone emptying Fort Knox. Both are crimes, but they're clearly not equal. Piers Morgan says we should wait before calling Trump's actions corrupt. Yet Jared Kushner walked away with a reported $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia after leaving the White House. A president's job is to serve our country, not enrich themselves, their relatives, or their political allies through personal business deals. That's completely different from conducting official foreign policy. As for the phrase Trump derangement syndrome, I'm tired of hearing it. Disagreeing with or criticizing a president isn't derangement. If a leader promotes ideas you believe are harmful, pushing back is called debate, not irrational behavior. The label is often used to avoid defending actions that deserve scrutiny. What do you think? After watching the discussion between Tim Miller and Piers Morgan, whose arguments convinced you more? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.